Hey, this is Rich Hart. Welcome back with Keith Eigel. All right, and Keith, in this segment, we're going to be talking about becoming a more perfected version of who you are.
Yeah, which is way easier to say than it is.
It is. That's why I had to put my glasses on to read it, just to make sure it was going to come out properly. All right. But we're talking about the perfected version of who you are.
Yeah.
Already. And in more ways themselves that we can apply skills, knowledge, tools, techniques, resources, things themselves we've already talked about relationships and accountability and communication and really directing between the business side and the personal sides and talking about this formula and how this core value finds a level of comfort, all right, inside our heart. All right, so we can find out who we are.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this a little bit more.
Yeah. So one of the, I guess, easiest and most accurate ways to gain an understanding of ourselves is through measures of personality.
Good.
Personality winds up accounting for, some significant enough portion of the pie when it comes to leadership effectiveness. When it comes to leadership placement, when it comes to is the right person in the right spot, that it matters, right?
And there are many tools.
So many tools, the DISC, emergenetics, the Golden, Myers-Briggs, go on and on. It goes,
boy.
And a lot of them are really measuring predictive index. A lot of these things are measuring, basically the initial theories and work of Carl Jung. Carl Jung, a lot of those follow around that. A lot of those are, some others are measuring kind of big five characteristics. And if people want to dig into that, they can Google it up. But basically, what happens is the way I like to think about this is if our developmental journey through life, especially our vertical journey, is like the road that we're on. It's the map that we're going, the journey that we're going on. Things like our personality, our intelligence, other things that we can measure like creativity or communication ability or strategic thinking or all of these different things are like the vehicle that we're driving.
Sure.
And we've been, for lack of a better word, given a vehicle that that we didn't get to pick out, right? And we don't get to trade it in.
Ford Pinto.
Hopefully not, right? There's only a small portion of the audience that even knows what that means anymore, right?
All right, that's the new version of a Prius.
Yeah,
or the older version of a Prius, right?
So the idea, when you start thinking about developmental maturity and outside inness versus inside outness,
right?
When we are really outside in, we allow our personality to be this thing that's almost doing something to us.
Right.
Like you don't understand that's just the way I'm built, as though I didn't have a choice in it, right? Like I'm allowing this thing inside of me.
Who I am
to do something to me that I can't change.
That's right.
And so if we go back to the formula for growth from our last episode, challenge and contradiction over time, how am I challenging the way I even understand about my personality? And in that way, I don't get to become someone I'm not.
That's right.
As a matter of fact, that's a bad idea to even try, even though sometimes we look at somebody and we go, oh, they're really good in that environment. How do I be just like them? Well, if you're not built just like them, bad idea.
Yeah.
Right? The question is,
a lab experiment.
All of these instruments are way more complex than a number of them get credit for.
Right.
But they all break down into there kind of strategists, there are analysts, there are helpers, and there are idealists. Right. And so you got these different ways of kind of throwing people into these gigantic boxes where there's all sorts of variation in the box. But see, if I'm built as an idealist, the question is not, can I become a strategist? The question is how do I become more strategic in my idealism?
And it's especially your thinking.
And your thinking, right? And does that mean that I'm going to have to stretch myself to build skills that are uncomfortable for me? Does that mean that I may have to listen to people more than I'm really built to listen to people? Because there are certain people when we start to look at personality that really are just chronically bad listeners. And they become a good listener by becoming a better version of the person who's not normally a great listener.
Sure.
Because what they bring to the table is actually the flip side of the listening coin. It's the ability to kind of think strategically and get ideas out there and set direction and bring followers along, and they don't want to hear from you.
That's right.
And yet, if they don't ever learn how to hear from you, you're not going to follow them for that long.
Nope, not at all.
Right? So in that way, they're becoming a better version of themselves. And so when we talk about that, it is a constant and it's a lifelong discovery. Again, when we get to be our age, chances are we're more inside out. We're more grounded in what we stand for, what we hold to be true.
Yeah.
And one of the problems that we face is if we don't keep looking at what could be challenging us, the odds of us becoming cranky old people will sneak up on us, and then it's too late.
100%. We call it stagnated.
And everyone's met cranky old people. They have.
You are. I'm not.
They have their way. They start a lot of their sentences. Well, in my generation, right? And so, what that means is becoming a better version of themselves is having some increasingly objective insight into not only what they hold to be true, but why they hold it to be true, how they hold it to be true, why they're resistant to that being challenged. And so this is this constant journey of growth that we get to carry all the way through the years that we've got a mind to think through it.
Right, exactly.
Challenge and contradiction over time and persevering through it. Not just sweeping it under the rug, right? And so this is how we become a more perfected version of ourselves. And when you talk about tools now, there are great tools that if you want to become a more perfected version of yourself, first, if you've never taken a personality test, there's enough free versions of stuff
without a doubt,
that they might not even be that great. But if you're not letting them define you, but rather letting them refine your understanding of yourself. So disagreeing with your results is actually a developmental approach to a personality assessment. But there are things like the Enneagram. There are things like just a great question for every manager and every leader to be asking everybody that reports to them at least once a year is, what's one thing I could do different to make you more effective at what I need you to do?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Right? And they're going to, and if you're willing to listen to it, if you're willing to really allow them to feel heard in a way that they can bring even more than they initially thought they were going to give you when you answered the question, because they're figuring out, is it even safe for me to answer this question?
Right. I'm talking to a guy that pays me.
Right. So I'm gonna step into that zone pretty cautiously.
Sure.
But if you can learn how to ask that question and really make people feel safe, and I think the best way to do that is just employing active listening skills. Like what I hear you saying is, man, thank you so much. Tell me more. Give me more. Right? You can start to challenge this lens that is so hard to challenge on purpose with intentionality. Right? And yet that's how we accelerate growth. There's no easy way around it.
Sure. There was time, and in fact, I think a lot of folks have gone through this, okay, where you're growing up and you're going through this leadership and you're working and developing the leadership model already for individuals themselves now, individuals from a leadership standpoint, they're looking to you. They're looking up to you, all right, to give them guidance, okay? There's a certain time, I know it's been in my life, okay, possibly others, possibly yourself, that you think you're invincible, okay? And you get to the particular point, well, I think I know everything. It's funny, as you take the downturn, I'm not telling you I'm taking a downturn, but as you take the downturn, okay, you realize you don't know everything. Okay. And you're looking to learn as much as you possibly can along the way. Okay. And I'm going to say, I tell my wife all the time, my wife will ask me a question, say, well, what do you think about this? Then the other says, honey, I have no clue about that. I have no clue. Let's Google it. Let's find out what it is. And now I'm saying is I'm just being honest with the communication and just really acknowledging that I don't know. I have no clue. All right. There are folks themselves in the companies. I rely on their expertise, their skills, their knowledge, their tools, their resources, their techniques that they have brought into, and especially the individuals in the company themselves, bringing into the forefront to help teach, train, learn, develop others in a particular way. I tell people all the time, Keith, I'm that close from being that far away every day. All right. Because I know itself that I'm still on this journey to learn as much as I possibly can. All right. So hopefully itself, tomorrow is going to be a new day that I can learn just one iota of something new.
Yeah.
And I think that's a developing leader. Yeah. That's an individual. I need 60 more years. Can you give me 60 more years on this?
Right now,
exactly. Right? So if I had 60 more years, I think I could do this. All right. But that close from being that far away every single day just means that I'm open-minded.
Oh my gosh.
I want to see things themselves that I want to see new. All right. And the guys and the ladies themselves and the folks themselves in here, they know that. They see that. They go, what the heck? This guy's out of his mind. All right. And that's okay to be out of your mind because I just want to continue to grow. What do you feel about that?
Yeah. I think the older we get, I'll say it this way. Let's not tie it to age. The further along the journey we get, the harder it is to have that attitude.
Sure.
I want to live at the edge of what I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And you use the word invincibility. And, if life is essentially, really our adulthood is about moving from outside inness, all the things that shaped us, all the things that we became early in our careers, out of college, all those shaping and things.
Right.
The rest of life is figuring out, how do I challenge those things that I'm just assuming are true?
Right, exactly.
And how am I going to own those in a way that is really true?
Yeah.
Every time we do that, we gain this new little piece of invincibility. Yeah. We think we've got it. The developmental psychologists, especially Piaget, talked about this in terms of disruption and homeostasis.
Homeostasis, right.
Right. And these periods of homeostasis, we feel like we've got something to say, right? We've got this figured out. We just went through some stuff. We're excited about this. The more homeostasis we gain over the course of our lives, the more potential we have for that to turn into like a permanent homeostasis, which the word I'd like to throw in that is stuckness.
Yeah.
And if we stay stuck, listen, 85% of the population gets to a point somewhere between their 45th and 65th birthday, if they've been people who've kept growing,
right,
where they've got their way, their paradigm, it's theirs, inside out. They figured it out. They wrote it through their last part of their career. They made money. They got promoted. They had influence, all of these things. And 85% of the population is going to say, so I've got it figured out. Come to me if you want some advice. Yeah. Well, the world keeps changing.
That's right, exactly.
People have got new ideas, and that's where I think if people who can't keep growing at that point have sort of two options. One is to become a cranky old person where they're just mad that everybody doesn't see how they've got it figured out.
Right.
And the other person is to become a benign old person. And that usually starts with a 5 o'clock cocktail where you want to make a bigger difference. You don't know what to do about it. So you're just figuring out a way to unplug.
Right.
But the coolest old people that I know see the world so far beyond what they ever thought was right. And every day they're open to where they're not right.
Right. Yeah. Keith, a lot of this too, as well, is probably your upbringing, my upbringing, upbringing of our generation. As boomers, as the boomers, the baby boomers out there. I've been through some crazy challenges, had to make some crazy choices, and made some decisions themselves that I was either happy or not happy with. I think that's all part of learning. That's all part of the growth. It's all part of the journey. All right. It is. That vertical we talked about already. But I'm thinking itself out there is that, was mine any harder than anybody else's? Did what I did at 5 years old, 6 years old, and then we talked about, 13 and 14, okay? Did that shape the direction that I'm in today? That's a darn good question.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure,
Yeah.
Because I'm always looking for the next thing,
Yeah.
And I think you and I both, we're always looking for that next, what's that next, not shiny object, but what's that next cool thing? Okay. Maybe it's longevity. Maybe it's not being a cranky old bastard. I don't know,
Yeah.
But I'm thinking itself out there, if leaders and leadership were just had a piece of that and be able to open their mind, their hearts, their spirit.
Yeah. One of the things that we've found in our programs is that when people understand the roadmap for growth, the stages that growing people will go through. Mm-hmm. And when they start to self-identify with a position on the journey that they're probably somewhat right about,
Sure.
they're probably in the neighborhood of self-assessing correctly. But when they understand what it looks like and examples of people who have continued to grow through their life,
right.
I meet very, very few people who don't want that for themselves.
That's right.
They want to be the kind of grandparent beyond their influence at work years that their grandkids want to be around, don't have to be around.
That's right, yeah.
Right? And so they want that. And that becomes very motivating. Mm-hmm. That becomes very much, I want to figure out, how do I get on that journey and stay on that journey? Because if the stats are right, about 85% of people stop growing and then become more cranky or more benign the longer they stay alive. That means that 16 out of every 20 people right. kind of fit that model.
Yeah, right.
How do I be like the 4 people that when I'm around them, I just feel like, wow, they get it. They get me. They get the world. They get everything at this higher level.
Right, right.
And when people understand that even that there's no waiting until then to figure out how to do it, it starts now. If you're lucky enough to join a program like we've put on for the last couple of decades, mm-hmm. in your late 20s, early 30s, you got a leg up. We get a lot of people that come to us at 45. They've been through a gazillion programs. And they're like, why am I just now hearing this? Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And we think this is learning. I mean, that's where my passion is I want more people to understand. I want more people out there figuring out how to apply this in their own worlds.
Right.
Because it makes a difference.
Mm-hmm. Getting closer, all right, to what it is they truly actually want to achieve. All right. And achievement is possible. I believe achievement is possible. All right. Will I ever get there? Will we ever get there?
Yeah. And a lot of that's how do you define achievement
exactly,
too, right?
Sure.
And what's most important to you about that. But I mean, one of the really cool things about the last 10 or 12 years and our ability to kind of measure our own neurology, right, in our brain, and what is going on with the movement and the changing and the neural pathways, and how do we process information? We're able to measure that. By the way, a dear friend of mine is taught neuropsychology for 35 years. She just retired. She said the reason I had to retire is because I'm now fully clear on how much we don't know. And I've worked my whole life thinking if we could just know this next piece.
Exactly.
So I want to say that, acknowledging there's more we don't know than we do know. But what we are able to see recently is that you can teach an old dog new tricks.
Good. I like that.
I mean, it is possible, but it's about leaning into challenge and contradiction and persevering through it in ways that create new neural pathways, new ways of understanding.
Right, yeah.
And when we bring a lifetime of experience to bear with now a wiser, more inside out, more developed way of understanding all these things that we know,
right?
It changes, it increases our influence, the impact that we want to have with the people that are most important for us to have that impact with.
Good. You were talking about programming all right, and the types of programs, all right. I'm sure individuals themselves listening to what we're talking about here today, you got people thinking, and people are saying, maybe I missed something, or maybe I want to expound on a little bit more, or maybe this could be for the company structure, people themselves, maybe family. I don't know. Maybe hopefully it's a big enough family. All right. But in that regards, let's just talk a little bit about your programming and how this programming really helps and how it's designed, all right, to help individuals through this leadership, all right, and determining who you and who they are or who they really want to be.
Yeah. So if I could use a sort of analogy or metaphor for just a minute, because anybody who's ever had any stretch of experience in their lifetime working out with a personal trainer, they will recognize that it's not one and done. They will recognize that there are better and worse ways to work out. They will recognize that the cadence of working out in smaller bites is more important than the cumulative effect of the hours. The hours spread out over time with a cadence make a difference.
Okay, good.
So when we began to structure the programs that we run, we realized that we had to build in cadence, that we had to build in some muscle tearing, that we needed to make it pay attention to the individuality of what each person brings to the table.
Exactly.
And so we have a program that we put together that basically follows the idea of a journey where we talk through the roadmap for growth and getting people to begin to engage with their own challenges and frustrations that they can see in themselves. We deal with the vehicle, our personality. What are the strengths that we tend to bring, strengths and struggles we tend to bring to the table just in how we're built?
Right.
And what do we do about that? And how do we allow that to grow us? Then we start to talk about baggage on the journey, and we get feedback. We're creating a culture of feedback around us. How do we get feedback from other people? There are ways to measure that numerically, but there are ways to measure that conversationally. We have programs that do both of those kinds of things, but really assessing what do others see in us. And then we start to talk about destination specifically. Like what is our big time getting into your area? Like what am I ultimately going to be about here? And why am I even doing what I'm doing? Right. And why do I want to make all that kind of destination kind of stuff? And then we talk about fuel for the journey. And the best thing about fuel is it's turning it outward. How does the student become the teacher?
Yeah.
And so we're wanting to bring more people into that fold, right? We've served corporate America, higher education, big and small, for the last 25 years. I want to bring more people who love developing people into this fold, right? I'm at a stage in life where I'm starting to recognize that I don't know how many years I have left, but it's not the same infinity years that I thought it was 10 years ago. Right. And I'm not.
This is what we call expectancy.
Right. And I'm wanting to bring people into this journey who love investing in other people.
Right.
So points of application, still trying to figure all that out,
Good,
Rich. But we'll keep doing what we're doing with the groups that come in. We've mostly served next generation high potential leaders nominated into the programs that we run. Good. As I've gotten more gray in my hair, I've increasingly worked with intact executive teams and kind of C-suite. And what's it look like for them to keep growing? Because everybody thinks that they're in a different category, but their ability to keep growing is still there.
Still same.
And yet the temptation to just think you got it all figured out is there at a greater degree as well.
I'll be the first one to tell you. I'll never figure it out.
Well, I'll be this. If you get to go first, I'll be the second one to tell you. So,
great, super. That close, that far away, without a doubt. But Keith, this has been a great eye opener. All right, for looking in. All right, to the lens, all right, if I can use that, looking at the lens of leadership, all righty. And it's not what we know, it's what we may be missing that will create a more fulfilling journey, already in working and developing our own relationships and probably our relationship with people, already. And whether the people themselves are with those that are close to you or folks themselves in business.
Yeah.
And I know I'm always you're always dealing with different types of personalities, and you're going to get personalities that just don't mix. They don't sit in the same cereal bowl, you know? And you're going to get that, but you find a way to work through the dynamics of specialized skills and knowledge, tools and techniques, things we talked about today. And once you get the opportunity itself, they're both swimming in the same milk, right? Or almond milk, and whatever you may use, all right? But I'm just saying to itself, there is a relationship that has to be built upon. There's a level of accountability and responsibility. We talked about vertical and formulas and planning and all those areas. And I know, all right, those are the things, not only you, that I tie into too as well in what we do. All right. And it's funny because when we first got together, we said, who is this guy? What does he do? And the two of us themselves have been running this parallel life already, very, very close in what we call the leadership side or the developmental side of working and developing dynamics with people and engaging them through those skills and resources, all right, to make them better at what they do. You know, and I think that's pretty cool. And I think we're both on the same openness and the same wavelength themselves. We don't have it figured out yet. And I probably will never have it figured out.
I hope not.
All right. And my wife is glad to hear that too as well, you know, without a doubt. But I'm just thinking itself out there, there are many more people that could possibly be listening to what we're talking about here and saying, that's something new. All right. Because they've already acknowledged themselves that they don't know. All right. But we will find a way to figure and develop within your, let's just say your habits and your beliefs and your construct, and developing that relationship with people, all right, and maybe even developing that relationship with yourself. And I think that's going to be extremely important going forward. So Keith, how can our folks themselves reach you?
LeadersICM.com.
Okay. And a phone number they can reach out?
Send it out there, 404-886-5404.
Good, superb. Keith, thank you very much.
What a fun conversation.
This has been a great conversation.
Thank you for
talking
sharing
about
your
leadership
journey
today and what we're doing. You'll expect to see us back again, okay? Because we're going to be talking more about what we can do and really breaking down how this leadership really plays a more vital or critical role, all right, in the steps that we take on that journey, all right, through that vertical. All right, the vertical arise, all right, out there. So without a doubt. So Keith, thank you very much.
Thank you, Raj.
And thank you very much to everybody out there. And we'll see you real soon. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.